Well, hello, and welcome to episode 221 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, we got to go out to the movie theater to see a movie that no one in the world thought that they might ever be able to see again. Now, it's not the biggest movie of all time, but certainly if you are a fan of Kevin Smith, you knew of the film Dogma and what lengths you've had to see it over the last 25 years. But it is back. The rights have been wrangled away from those who shall not be named, and Dogma is back in the theaters. Today, we're going to talk about it.
Today we are going to talk about it. I am so excited because I actually do have a copy of Dogma. But back in the day, you always thought you would have access to these things, right? Like when movies came out, you would buy them if you really liked them. But it wasn't one of those things where you had to go buy it or you'd never see it again, unless it was a Disney film, because they do that.
Into
They
the
used to
vault,
do that.
baby.
Right, they would go into the vault and they would only come out every like 10 years for 4 seconds, and it was like a pandemonium. Anyway, this was not that. I had this, and then all of a sudden, I noticed we were talking about Chasing Amy and Clerks and all of these Kevin Smith films, and I was going to go binge all of these things and couldn't find Dogma, couldn't find it anywhere. And Just Watch is a great app for trying to find things, and it laughed in my face basically. It was like, ha ha, you're never going to see it again. Go look at your videotape from 1999 that I still have. It's great.
That's right. Your first press DVD there from 1999 was the only way you could see it. But yeah, we got to go out to the theater, see it again on the big screen, and see it for the first time on the big screen for me at least. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into the dogma of all the things, we need to get into the cocktail of all the things. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, when we were looking at creating a cocktail for Dogma, I was going crazy because I couldn't figure out how to incorporate certain aspects of this film into one thing. Like I was like,
Mhm.
it's probably really sacrilegious to do like a Buddy Christ cocktail, right? It was probably like that,
Some Buddy Christ communion wine. Yeah, that probably
right.
not the best.
That would probably not be a good thing, right? I mean, I think Kevin Smith would have been down. He would have gotten it. It would have been okay with him. But then I realized there's a whole scene that has a cocktail in it. At least not maybe not a cocktail, but shots and shots of tequila that cannot be imbibed because one angel went too far, and now the poor Metatron can't actually shoot any of his tequila. So it's kind of an uncomfortable scene because he's drinking the tequila and immediately spitting it out. At least he's not re-drinking it and spitting it out. He has like a whole line of shots waiting for him and like a bowl that he spits into it. Anyway, but that's where this came from. I was like, I bet we can find a tequila drink that also is all about the Jesus, and that's what we came up with from Avion Tequila.
That's right. Yeah, Avion Tequila here with the cocktail by the name of Jesus Maria Mule. So it's basically a Moscow Mule, but it's going to be given the tequila treatment here. And it's going to call for the addition of some prickly pear syrup. So let's go ahead and mix one of these up real quick, and then we can talk about what we used and what we thought about the cocktail. So into a shaker tin goes 2 ounces of silver tequila. Avion is preferred here because it's their recipe, but 2 ounces of whatever silver tequila you'd like to use there. A half ounce of a prickly pear syrup, which you can make or buy. We bought ours, so more on that here in just a second. And then 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Go ahead and shake that with some ice and strain it into a ice-filled like rocks glass or cocktail glass of some sort, and then you're going to go ahead and top that off with ginger beer. You don't want to use like the copper mug like you would for a Moscow Mule. I mean, you could, but then you would miss out on having this beautiful little pink cocktail that you're going to be sipping and enjoying. Garnish it with a lime wedge, and you're good to go. So, Michaela, we've talked about like different variants on the Moscow Mule many a time here over the course of the podcast, but I don't think we've ever made one with tequila. So, what did you think about that pairing first? And then let's talk about the prickly pear.
So I really liked this. I'm not a huge ginger beer person, as you know, and so I don't do a lot of mules. This was really neat. I really liked it. If you like tequila, this is going to be right up your alley. It's got like the bitiness of the tequila with like the kind of the spice of the ginger, and depending on the ginger beer, of course, it's going to be more or less spicy and gingery depending on which one you get. But I really liked the kind of the combination of that bite.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I wasn't 100% sure on how I thought that the tequila was going to pair up with the ginger beer, but I thought that it was okay. And the prickly pear certainly went a long way, and it added a lot of sweetness to it. The prickly pear is like a sickeningly sweet fruit that you get. I think it's kind of native to like the southwestern regions here of the United States. And we'd had a bottle of the syrup here on hand for quite a while, so I was happy to find another reason to use that. But ours came from Da Vinci. Now, there's probably a lot of different brands of prickly pear syrup out there that you could get, or you could make your own if you have access to prickly pears. I don't think here in the Carolinas that prickly pears come across our grocery aisle very often. So if you have some, let us let us know what it tastes like if you make up your own syrup. But yeah, I thought that this was pretty good. The Moscow Mule, going off of the vodka there, it comes from a wider range of cocktails known as a buck, which is basically a base spirit, some lime juice, and then your ginger beer. So this is, I guess, like a tequila buck, technically.
Mm.
But yeah, it's certainly going to make a good kind of rotation there because the mule is something that's easy to put together. It's very crowd pleasing, and to have another little riff on it is always a good idea. So now that we have a good riff on a good mule, let's go ahead and take a quick break because we have a lot. We have a lot of characters to talk about because this thing is chock full of just some of the most fantastic people of 1999 for sure. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Dogma.
Is this why I had to come down here this morning, man? Is this why I had to miss my cartoons? You call me, you tell me it's important.
We're going home. Take it, man. Quit leering at me. People are gonna think I just broke up with you.
Two fallen angels have just discovered a loophole that can get them back into heaven.
Outstanding work!
All they have to do is get to Red Bank, New Jersey. There's only one problem.
What are you? What do you want with me?
Stop a couple of angels from entering and thus negating all existence. I hate it when people need it spelled out for them.
Spoiler warning for Dogma. If you've not yet seen this film, you're in luck because now you can. I was going to say you couldn't. It's not possible. You're just going to have to go into a theater. But now it looks like you just might be able to if you've not seen it. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely go press pause and you should go watch it because we are going to probably murder this in so many ways. We're not going to do it justice because this is truly one of the best films of the late 90s, hands down, and there's a lot going on. So do yourself a favor. Go get yourself a Jesus Maria Mule. Go watch Dogma in all the places that you can, and then come back and let's chat about it. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, you've had 25 years to see it, but it's been hard to come by over the last couple of years, and we'll talk about that here in a second. This one released in, I believe, in November of 1999. It was written and directed by Kevin Smith, and it stars Linda Fiorentino as Bethany, the descendant of Jesus, who will have to journey across country to save all of human existence. And the cast-out angels who discover a loophole in God's plan, Bartleby and Loki, are played by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. There's also like a whole slew of other A-listers from the time from 1999 that are coming along on this ride with us, and we're going to talk about them kind of as we go through the different pieces of this story. So this is the 25th anniversary of Dogma. It's a movie that I've liked a lot since 1999. I've been a fan of Kevin Smith since well before that, with Clerks and Mallrats and Chasing Amy, which came out in 1997. This was kind of the next like big step. It was like a bigger budget, kind of more marketed than those films were, certainly to a degree. And yeah, certainly kind of took the world over, at least the world of Catholicism and the world of Kevin Smith fans for sure. Because it had a pretty small budget still, as like $8 million, but it made a lot of that money back. And you're talking about a year of 1999 that saw both The Matrix and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace come out. So, extra movie bucks were few and far between after you went and saw those two. But now it is making a comeback. I mentioned He Who Will Not Be Named owned the rights to this and basically had it on lockdown for the last several years, which is why you haven't been able to see it. But apparently Kevin Smith has been able to get those rights wrangled away. So we're seeing the 25th anniversary showings now in the theaters, and I think he's going to do kind of like one of those tour things that he likes to do when he has a new film come out, and show the film, do a Q&A, and then I would imagine that there's probably going to be some sort of I don't know, like Steelbook release of this maybe, or Criterion release of this maybe, or some kind of release of this maybe where you'll be able to actually like get it at home and watch. But that's kind of the Dogma game plan going forward, I guess. But yeah, certainly glad to have Dogma back again.
Yes, absolutely. And oddly enough, this was the first Kevin Smith film I ever saw. So I totally missed Chasing Amy, totally missed Mallrats, Clerks. I saw those all after this. This film literally changed my life. It came out in 1999. I was in the throes of trying to figure out who I was spiritually. I was in high school. I was dating an atheist, being like super Jesus-y, dating an atheist. It's a real good time. 10 out of 10 recommend it. Taking him to a movie though, where we both were like, oh, maybe this is really what God's all about was kind of neat. And so that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't seen Dogma. So let's get started and get into it because there's a lot, and I'm going to preface this again. Y'all listeners who've seen this film, please go easy on us because and Brian, I'm sorry in advance because I know how much you love this movie. We're gonna try and keep it as organized as possible because it packs a punch and there's a lot going on. So we're gonna start, I guess, with Bartleby and Loki, and they're doing the thing that Love Actually does. Like they're sitting in an airport looking at people coming back or at a train station, people coming back, and it's like super sweet. Except Loki is like trying to talk to a nun and have her have like an existential theological crisis.
It is like
And
Love Actually, because Loki's gaslighting that nun, just like what's his name from The Walking Dead,
oh
gaslights that
my
lady
gosh.
in Love Actually. Yeah, they're hanging out at the airport, right? They're meeting there, and I like they're like this is a place where humanity is at its finest, right? All sins kind of are forgiven at that last moment that you reconnect with someone. But yeah, they're getting together because someone has sent anonymously this article from a newspaper from New Jersey talking about how the Cardinal Glick has started this thing, and he has proclaimed that anyone who walks into the church, basically all of their sins are forgiven, which is a really good way to get people back into church, and that's going to be a good sign for Bartleby and Loki because they have been cast out of heaven. What happens when you don't do what God wants you to do? You're an angel. You get cast out to live in Wisconsin for the rest of time. So they're going to be off to New Jersey to walk through this arch, be forgiven of all of their sins, and get back into heaven.
And that's a real problem, apparently, because God can't change his mind or anything, I guess. And so a lot of things have to happen spiritually for this to be stopped, right? Now, you could ask yourself, where's God in all this? And we find out later. God can take a lot of forms. Apparently, he really likes skee ball, and he is these demon kids, they actually look just like regular teenagers. Maybe that is the issue. Maybe all teenagers just go to hell for a few years while they and beat up old men and put them in a hospital. But anyway, so God's out of the picture. But what we do have is Metatron, which is the voice of God, played by the absolutely incredible Alan Rickman. It's hard to imagine anybody else being in this film in this role. It couldn't have gone to a better actor. It's so good. He is hilarious. He is so kind, even at the end, the way he talks to everybody and his like dry sarcasm is just amazing.
We pick up with our story, right? Bethany here is our main character, played by Linda Fiorentino, and we learn a little bit about her, right? She works at this abortion clinic. She is a struggling Catholic, and she's about giving up on the whole thing, right? Like she has some really fun kind of interactions with her work colleague there,
Janine
Janine Garofalo,
Garofalo.
who's playing
Yeah.
Liz. I love Janine Garofalo. And yeah, so she's struggling with all of this, and of course that's when Metatron comes in, Alan Rickman's character. I like she like douses him with with the fire extinguisher when he comes in, because of course you come in flaming. You can't just come in like a normal person if you're the voice of God, of course. So you get there, and you basically are charging Bethany with this task, right? She has to go to New Jersey to stop a couple of angels from going through this entry and basically undoing all of existence because God is infallible. So to prove God wrong, that's a bad time. I love this movie on a lot of levels because A, it's humorous, and as a fan of Kevin Smith, I really like that kind of sense of humor. I love kind of all of the quirky characters that we get here, and how they're represented through some pretty like top list actors of the time for sure. But it's also interesting that this is just like a straight up, straightforward hero's journey for Bethany. If you think of like Lord of the Rings as being like the most
Hmm.
classic of hero's journey stories, that is exactly what this is. This is just Bethany on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Yeah, 100%. And we meet some amazing kind of characters along the way. I love some of the Bible banter. Metatron is no one knows who he is, and to be honest, I still don't know who he is. I'm not, but he's like, if it's in a Charlton Heston movie, you humans think that you're experts, but you've never heard of me, and I'm like the voice of God. This seems really unfair. But they kind of end up finding their way on a train, and they meet up unknowingly with Loki and Bartleby. Um, and over many alcoholic beverages, right? Bethany, we learn more about Bethany and her crisis of faith, right? She had been married. She really wanted to have a family, and for whatever reason, she had this infection in her uterus and she couldn't have kids. And she's confessing this to Bartleby. And of course, as you do, he's going to totally use that against her when she confesses that, hey, she's on this weird journey and she doesn't know why. She's there with Jay and Silent Bob, who are hilarious. Again, this is the first time I had ever been introduced to Jay and Silent Bob, so I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to speak.
I was curious about that because Jay and Silent Bob are, fixtures in Kevin Smith's films. Of course, starting with Clerks, which makes sense because they're just the stoner guys that sell weed outside of the Quick Stop, right? It makes sense that they're in Mallrats because they're just hanging out. But here they're playing the prophets, right? Jay and Silent Bob. So one quick story, and then I'm going to ask you actually about this. So apparently,
Okay.
Kevin Smith, who I've seen a couple of times now doing these Q&A type things, and he'd said, when they were going to be doing the movie and he was talking to Jason Mewes, who plays Jay, this was going to be a big deal. It was going to be super serious. Alan Rickman had signed on to it, who is this super prestigious, like British actor, all this stuff. And apparently Jason Mewes like freaked out and he went home and memorized the entire script like in one night because he was so like hung up on the fact that he had to do a really good job, right? Like he felt like all this pressure on him, and I always
Aw.
thought that that was very sweet and very endearing. But yeah, so I was familiar with them. So when they showed up, no surprise to me. Of course, they're going to be in there. Kevin Smith's got to write himself into the story. Of course, Jay and Silent Bob are there for some comedic relief. That you need when the world's about to end, and of course, they're playing the prophets here, who are going to give some advice along the way to Bethany. So I want to throw this back to you, Michaela, because I think it's more important, having never seen any of those films, where you're like, who are these knuckleheads? They're obnoxious. Are they funny? What did you think about these two in 1999?
So, I remember around me or be excited around me when you finally see Jay and Silent Bob because Bethany is getting attacked by these three demon kids, right? These teenagers, and they kind of show up and they're like, ha ha! And of course, Jay is like, suck my lefty or something. I don't know. It's something completely depraved. And Silent Bob says nothing as he
Hmm.
does.
Hmm.
I liked it. I mean, Jay is obnoxious. And so, but it was one of those things where it was like, oh, they have to fit into this movie somewhere. And they do pretty well. I mean, I kind of, the comic relief is 15-year-old, kind of and kind of immature, but I liked it. I think it's funny. I what I really liked was like they are considered the prophets, even though like Jay is like an idiot, right? Like,
Hmm.
and you think that the when you think of somebody as being a prophet, they're going to foretell and they're going to be wise and they're going to be all these things. And Jay and Silent Bob are just stoner dudes, right? They're just hanging out. And Silent Bob actually is really wise. When he opens his mouth, he only opens his mouth like three times in this whole movie, and he says two words each time. So it's not like in Chasing Amy, where he's kind of the crux of the whole story about like love and the thematic element there, right? He doesn't do that here, which I found kind of interesting. But again, I didn't know that when I first saw this. For me, I think the kicker was meeting Rufus, who was the 13th apostle, played by Chris Rock. Hilarious. And the way that he and Jay and Silent Bob kind of riff off each other, even though
Hmm.
I find it hilarious. And so I was sad that Rufus never shows up anywhere else, which makes sense since he's a Bible character. Apparently, he was written off. Uh, I don't know,
Yeah,
but
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. The 13th Apostle Rufus. Yeah, he falls from the sky, right? To which Bethany says, that probably should have killed you. But yeah, he's already dead, because he's the 13th apostle, and he's here because he wants to, set some things straight as far as the Bible goes, because no one knows of the 13th apostle, which is a great affront there to Chris Rock. Um, Chris Rock is amazing in this. I love Chris Rock in this so much. He's probably my favorite character, and I do love kind of the interactions there because Jay, of course, is is like high strung, and kind of obnoxious, and Rufus will kind of play that off, but he has like this neat kind of comedic like rapport with the way Kevin Smith plays Silent Bob, and a lot of like the mannerisms and things like that he has. I think that Kevin Smith does a really really excellent job in this as well. Playing the role of Silent Bob. Yeah, Chris Rock here is really the crux of it, and he's an important character for Bethany because he knows Metatron, right? So you can kind of vouch for that. He knows a couple of the other characters we're going to be meeting here, and he also knows our enemies in the story. You already had mentioned that, kind of towards the tail end of the film, they all kind of meet up on the same train headed for New Jersey, and Rufus is the one that kind of spills the tea there that these are the bad guys, so we should not be hanging out with them. And he makes the very good point that if your enemy knows where you are, don't be there. And that is a good idea. And it's about that time that we lose Jay and Silent Bob to the strip club. Don't camp out next to the strip club if you're with two knuckleheads like Jay and Silent Bob for sure. But if Salma Hayek is in there, maybe swing by. I don't know.
I mean, a case can be made for that. You're not going to see much though, because she's also an angel. She is a muse. So she has lived throughout space and time, and she has no, I don't know, private parts. Can we say that way? And
Sure,
so she's
sure.
like, I lack definition. And everybody in the entire audience is really upset by that because it's Alma Hayek and she's a stripper. But this is the first time we see a demon that's like made out of poop. That comes
Hmm.
out of a toilet, and Bob immobilizes it with an aerosol air freshener. God bless
Yeah,
Silent Bob.
Go Gotham.
I don't
Yeah,
know, the Golgothan. Rah. It's I will say this was not a special effects driven movie, and you can tell like it doesn't that part doesn't like age well. It's pretty obvious that that it's kind of hokey looking now, but it was still a good time seeing it on the big screen this time. Um, yeah, I really like this piece because again, we talk about God being a woman, which I thought was really cool. And we also talk about this really great conversation between Rufus and Bethany and serendipity, right? They talk about
hmm
ideas versus beliefs and how it's easier to change an idea, it's much harder to change a belief. And I really want to say that little, I mean, it's only like maybe a minute long piece of dialogue, but that had changed the way I thought about religion in general for my entire life. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Probably, but because Bethany was like, I don't understand why it's such a big deal that like how is us how are those two Loki and Bartleby characters going into this church really going to nullify all existence? And it's because of this idea of dogmatic belief and dogma in general, and beliefs versus ideas. And I really like that this is a hero's journey, right? You said it, and it's a
hmm
comedic kind of look at all irreverent comedic look at all things religious, but it's so much deeper than that too. Um, it's so much deeper than that. And we see even when a little bit further along in the film, when Bartleby and Loki kind of start talking about, hey, when we're going to get there, we're gonna become human. Then we got to walk through as soon as we can because they'll kill us, and then we got to die, and then we got to, so then we'll ascend to heaven. And Loki realizes the consequences of the scheme, and he's like, no, 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 wait a minute. I want to go home just as much as anybody, right? But this ain't cool. Like you're sounding an awful lot like another angel that doesn't understand or have any regard for human life, and that's not okay. And so it's interesting because again, there's this extra layer on top of this very comedic like journey that you're seeing in a kind of a, I wouldn't say a dark sense, but like a religious irreverent sense.
hmm
The layers in this film are really special.
Yeah, absolutely. They are very special. And you mentioned, kind of Bartleby and Loki there, and kind of the dialogue that they have, and it's amazing because Kevin Smith knows Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, so therefore they're in a lot of their films. But it's also important to remember that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are like two of like the greatest actors of our of our lifetimes right here, and you get to see that on
Right.
display a couple of times. Their interactions there at the airport, kind of in that opening scene. Their interaction, kind of on the bus when they're deciding that Loki is going to go and rain down fire and brimstone on the people at
Hmm.
Movie Corp, right? For bringing about an idol to compete with God. This is one last act, I guess, on Earth before they go, and then kind of when Loki is realized that Bartleby is letting this go too far, right? Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe we should heed these warnings, and they have this more fiery confrontation, just the pair of them in this parking garage, and they're absolutely incredible, right? They have such good chemistry together, which we've seen in
Hmm.
lots of films, not just Kevin Smith films, but all sorts of films. It just absolutely like staggering. So on one hand, you have Bethany's hero's journey, but you almost have like on the flip side of that, like the B side of this film, you almost have like this road trip story of these two incredible like best friend actors that are going through the
Yeah.
story as well, which is pretty cool. They're not the only baddies though. We've got a couple, or we've got another one here we need to make note of here. That is Azrael, who's played by Jason Lee. It turns out he is a demon. He is come up from hell, basically to make sure the Bartleby and Loki are able to go through with this plan. It turns out that Azrael is the one that sent that newspaper clipping to
Mm.
them in the first place, right? Because as he puts it, it's better to not exist at all than to exist in hell. I like Jason Lee a lot. Jason Lee is kind of the main character in Mallrats. I really love his comedic timing, and you get a lot of that here in this film as well. He's taking more of a secondary role, of course, to Bartleby and Loki, but I like kind of his interactions, and when you get swung upon by a blessed driver by Cardinal Glick. That's no good for Azrael, but he's pretty good. And then I'll let you speak of our dear late George Carlin, who actually I think opens the film right with the Buddy Christ thing. We have to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we have to talk about that. So, he plays Cardinal Glick. Man, Cardinal Glick is amazing. George Carlin is he was a national treasure. And we all know, well, I don't know if the listeners know, you should go look up his comedy. It is just as irreverent as this film, probably more so. But he's got a problem with the Catholic Church. Like he's part of the Catholic Church, but he has a problem. He and the Catholic Church have a collective problem, and that is no one wants to go to church anymore because no one wants to feel judged for living their lives. And he's like, how he came up with this idea, and he shows it off as the Buddy Christ. He's like, Jesus is such a downer, man. Like he's telling you that you're going to hell for doing all the things that are actually really fun. What if we decide that Jesus is just your friend and and it's totally fine, man. What you're doing is fine. There's no judgment here. Let's call it like we're gonna rebrand Jesus, and instead of having him hang on a cross with blood and gore and stuff like that, we're gonna have him like I don't know. We're gonna have him look like he's made out of plastic, and he's gonna like I don't know, give you the
Yeah,
two thumbs up,
gives you
right? It's
gives
like
you
the
it gives you
Buddy
a thumbs up
Christ.
and a finger gun. Yeah, Buddy
And
Christ.
it's
Yeah, Jesus
totally
didn't
fine.
come to give you the willies. He came to cheer you up. So there you go. You got the Catholicism Wow campaign. So I love that, and then I love they have another kind of interaction with Cardinal Glick later, right? Bethany and crew get there ahead of Bartleby and Loki, and they're basically like, "Hey, if you just shut down the church, this can't happen, right?" And then that'll be
Hmm.
good. And of course, Cardinal Glick, too much pride to do that for sure. So that's not going to happen. And about then, the team thinks that all is lost, and they go off there. And of course, then Bartleby and Loki show up. Loki, cuts off his wings and starts getting drunk because that's exactly what I would do at the end of times for sure. But Bartleby is just going off the hook, right? Like he's like killing everyone there. He's like picking people up and dropping them on the street. He's going nuts. Ben Affleck. There, you get a pretty cool shot of like Ben Affleck like descending like from the
Yeah.
sky with his angel wings there. So that's pretty good. And then you're left with the problem of how to get rid of these guys, right? Loki now has cut his wings off, so he's a human, so he can be dealt with, and Bartleby does that, betrays his own best friend. That's not great. Bartleby.
Yeah.
That's a bad look. That's a bad look. But Bartleby is there, left to go through the gate and have the police show up, just in time to shoot him, and then he can go up to heaven, and that'll erase all of existence. But Bethany knows, thanks to the prophet there, Jay, that we do have that older gentleman. That skee ball fan that you mentioned earlier in the movie
Hmm.
is just close by. He's been held on life support. So if we can get rid of him, then God can come in and do her job and set things straight.
Yeah. And boy does she, right? Again, it's kind of funny because you think these prophets are wise, and if it hadn't been for Jay and Silent Bob saying, hey, tipping Bethany off, we, God wouldn't have, that poor man or whatever that inside God. I don't really know how it works, but he dies, and then God ends up her soul like shows up, and Metatron is there, and it's really cool. I never thought God was Alanis Morissette, but after Jagged Little Pill, why not? Why
Why
the heck
not?
not? And she comes in, she's looking really godly. She looks very Grecian, like a I don't know, like a goddess, right? She's got that toga
Hmm.
thing going on, and she immediately, what I love, and again, it goes to the acting of Ben Affleck, because Matt Damon is dead, right? His character is dead. Bartleby is there and sees God, and God just looks at him, and he's like, I'm really sorry. Like he's no like he and he's like a child. He's just like a
Hmm.
child who's like gotten caught, with their fingers in the till kind of thing. And so God speaks. It's gonna everybody's head's gonna explode, so you gotta cover your eyes, because Metatron is not gonna speak for God, she's gonna speak for herself.
Hmm.
But she is the Almighty, so she can undo all of the badness, and apparently everybody's no longer dead, and the street's all clear, and everything's fine again. And it's really beautiful, because Bethany then, of course, tries to talk to God, and I really love this, because what would you say if you actually, believe in God? What are you gonna say? And she's like,
Hmm.
I don't know. And she just rambles on a minute about like, why are we here? And maybe I shouldn't ask that, but I kind of want to know, and what's going on. And yeah, it's
Hmm.
pretty hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a really good shot there. As you mentioned, Bartleby is, kind of, looking at God there, extremely remorseful, and, tears are coming on. And, as you mentioned, about like a kid got, caught with his hand in the cookie jar or something like that. There's a really great shot, and it's kind of from behind, and it's like going through like the angel wings that had been cut off. And you get to see like Alanis Morissette's face kind of next to Ben Affleck's, and she kind of leans in and kisses him on the cheek, before she makes his head explode. But I think that like in this weird, quirky, Kevin Smithy comedy, like it does kind of come full circle, and you actually do feel sort of bad for Bartleby and Loki by the end of this, because basically they were cast out just for like a disagreement, right? Loki threw down his flaming sword. He didn't want to keep killing people, right? Old Testament times are out now. Let's get to the New Testament, right? More peace and harmony, please. And they get cast out from that, so they really just wanted to go home, and you kind of do like feel bad and like understand like why they would be trying to find this loophole right by the end of all of that. So yeah, I mean that, and then of course that's kind of where the film ends there with those dispatched, and Alanis Morissette has showed up to clean up the city, and things like that, and we're off. So I don't know. I like this movie an awful lot. I wanted to make note because I mentioned it now a bunch of times, the hero's journey, and the Lord of the Rings being kind of the one of the more at least modern penultimate tellings of that. Howard Shore does the music here for Dogma, who goes on to do the music for The Lord of the Rings, just I think 2 years later when that comes out. So that's pretty good. And he mentioned the prophets here of Jay and Silent Bob as being these goofballs who you might not necessarily always associate at being prophets. But allow me to nerd out here for a second. But in Kurosawa films, which also follow a very strict hero's journey sort of lineage in those stories, the prophet characters in that are almost always some sort of like jestery kind of thing, or like the pair of them there in that too. So
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Huh. That's neat. I mean, I don't know. So you watched this, did you? And I was in a very different place, right? So I was very, very active in like my youth group. I was part of a like a Southern Baptist church, and
Hmm.
so I remember telling my youth group that I was going to watch this, and they were like, "Okay," but I wasn't going to let that stop me. I went, and I don't know. For me, right? There was this whole question about whether or not this was irreverent, and it sort of a sin to watch something that kind of made fun of all of these holy things, right? Especially now, I wasn't Catholic, but especially as a Catholic, I can imagine
Hmm.
people having thoughts and feelings about that. Um, but to me, I think that this actually was more affirming for faith and beliefs and thoughts and ideas around religion and God than it hurt. And it's interesting because I think I got more out of this than I ever did like Jesus Christ Superstar or Passion of the Christ, dare I say it. And I think a lot of people probably felt the same way, which is why everybody was really sad that they couldn't get their hands on it for years because it was in the clutches of evil. But now the right's being righted, and I'm really excited about that. So, what was it like? I mean, I'd love to hear kind of your final thoughts on this film because I know that it's one that's meaningful to you.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we mentioned, this came out in November of '99, which would have been, in our senior year of high school, our very impressionable senior year of high school age there. I didn't see this at the movie theater, so I probably wouldn't have seen it until probably that following spring when it would have come out onto, VHS or DVD or however I would have taken it in kind of at that point. But yeah, I mean, this movie has always been kind of really special to me, and in a way because I do like Kevin Smith, and I certainly understand that it's a very specific like sense of humor that you either are going to like or you're not going to like, right? Like it's very specific kind of in that way. So I certainly can understand that people that might not like that, and this is well dialed down from what you would get from, say, a Clerks or a Mallrats. Chasing Amy is a little bit more serious, but then you go through into like the Jay and Silent Bob, like Strike Back, which is like way over the top in terms of that sense of humor there. So on that level, I thought that it was really good. I connected with it on like a comedic level. But yeah, to the church point, I think that when you see this, and Kevin Smith talked a lot about all of like the church groups and things that would protest the film and how he would go out and join in on the protest because he thought it was hilarious that people were protesting the movie. But like his biggest point of all of that was that people were protesting it without even having seen it. So I think you just like look at the tin and you very literally are like judging this book by its cover without having seen it because I think if you do watch it, I think that it is very religion affirming. I don't want to misspeak here, but I believe Kevin Smith I think is probably a Catholic, which is why this kind of takes place in this as well. And certainly there are aspects of that can be like looked at under a microscope and needled a little bit, and that's okay. But yeah, I think that largely it is kind of affirming of those things, and you get excellent dialogue of ways to interpret things that might be more beneficial or more helpful, like you mentioned, kind of the serendipity and Bethany
Hmm.
exchange there, where it's easier to change an idea than a belief. And yeah, absolutely, there's tons of nuggets like that throughout the whole thing. It's layered and kind of this very quirky, you know, very specific sense of humor that Kevin Smith brings to his films. But I mean, it's well written. The dialogue is sharp. You get to see Alan Rickman, who is just absolutely like insanely good in this. I mentioned Chris Rock. This is probably my favorite Chris Rock thing, other than maybe some of
Oh,
his stand up. I
100%.
think he's excellent in this. And of course, anytime you get to see George Carlin show up in something, it's worth watching just for that. So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, awesome.
Well, well, awesome indeed. So that's going to wrap it up, I think, for Dogma celebrating its 25th anniversary. So go check it out on the big screen if you have a chance, or hopefully you can run down a copy of it, or let us know if you've seen this, what you think about it, and all that stuff. And if you happen to mix yourself up a Jesus Maria Mule, let us know that. You can do that on any of our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to go to our website, it's www.drinkthemovies.com. That's where we have episode recaps, pictures of all of our cocktails, links to Drink the Video Games, links to the merchandise shop and links to the Patreon, which is patreon.com/drinkthemovies. We get bonus content up there, including bonus episodes, hangouts, cocktail chats, all sorts of stuff. So you can go over there. Again, it's patreon.com/drinkthemovies for more information on how to support the podcast that way. And we appreciate our patrons so much. Michaela, we are off to the movie theater again next week to take in a new film, right? Not its 25th anniversary, although not that far off from the original version of the story, right? It's been a long time now. How to Train Your Dragon's been out in the world, but that's what we're talking about next week, and people are going to want to make sure that they're tuned in for that. You know, come for Dogma and stay for How to Train Your Dragon. There you go. Where can people make sure that they're signed up for the podcast? Leave us a rating or review. That would be great. Do that,
That
please.
would be great. You can leave us a 5-star review at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Near Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. There is a way to subscribe to every single one of those. But you don't have to subscribe to all of them. You can subscribe to your favorite one. But if you're going to do that, you might as well also press the little button on the stars and leave us a review. If you're liking what you're hearing, it really helps us get more and more listeners, trend higher and all of that stuff. And we can't do that. That's all y'all. That's all you listeners. And we're so grateful. This is the best job in the world. We get to talk about our favorite movies and really fun cocktails. Check out Drink the Video Games because that is also a really good time. And I pop in to talk about a cocktail and then muse about a video game that I haven't played. Although I have played the latest one that's out. Believe it or not, that's new, and you should go check that out because it's my favorite so far. It's so good. Yeah, do that. We are so grateful for all of our listeners, and if you want more stuff, you can always check out our Patreon. There's lots of goodies and hangouts and really really cool stuff going on there too. So thank you so much to all of our listeners. And I guess we'll talk next time.
On
Drink
Drink the
the movies.
Movies.
I told you she was a woman.
Is there ever any doubt? She's not really a woman. She's not really anything.